And federal law enforcement are seeing more cases involving disturbing crimes involving kids and teens, sometimes taking place entirely online.
Fox 12 investigative reporter Adrian Thomas has more on the rise of what investigators call gore groups, including a recent case here in the metro area that got the attention of the FBI. Adrian, I think a lot of people have never heard of gore groups.
Yeah, Shauna, I certainly hadn't either prior to reporting on this story. Now, in what law enforcement describes as a relatively newer trend, criminals behind these gore groups seek to take advantage of impressionable youth, primarily online, whether it's manipulating them to harm themselves or others, or coercing them to engage in illegal, sexually explicit activity. One local police sergeant tells us he had never seen such a disturbing crime when he recently helped the FBI in an investigation involving a victim right here in the metro area.
In this case, it did take a dark turn very quickly. The content was, to me, disturbing. I was shocked as a law enforcement investigator. And for me to be shocked, I mean, I see a lot of things.
Sergeant Brandon Clausen of the Lake Oswego Police Department experienced a career first last June while working as a detective. He was contacted by the FBI in Portland to help investigate an alleged sex abuse crime happening in Lake Oswego, but the suspect was more than 3,000 miles away. According to federal court documents, the victim, a 14-year-old girl in Lake Oswego, had met a man in his early 20s in Florida using Instagram. Clausen and his colleagues quickly discovered a pattern of manipulation and solicitation of sexually explicit material from the man over messaging and social media apps like Discord, X, and Telegram. Clausen and the FBI would quickly find out the man was engaging in behavior consistent with gore groups, something Clausen hadn't seen before.
That was the first one, to be honest, yeah. I'd never heard of it, never even would have considered that would be something that people would be into or be doing. A gore group is a group that not only grooms victims, but delights in sexual violence, sexual torture, sexual rape, murder. It shocks the conscience.
Just days after the initial investigation, the FBI got permission from the victim's parents to pose as her on the different messaging platforms to determine where the man might be and gather more evidence. And in just a few days, the FBI was able to trace an IP address to a residence where 24-year-old Juan Sebastian Perez lived in Naples, Florida. That's where agents executed a search warrant.
He admitted to everything. He was even working on grooming other girls, unfortunately. He was part of, like you mentioned, a gore group.
Perez was arrested and charged with enticement of a minor to engage in sexual activity and possession and distribution of child pornography. His court proceedings played out over the past year, and he ultimately pled guilty and was sentenced to 30 years in federal prison this past March. FBI Portland Special Agent in Charge Doug Olson says these kind of crimes are being seen more frequently and that people and groups involved often use less monitored platforms like encrypted messaging apps. What's the prevalence of some of these kinds of cases in Oregon and the jurisdiction that you cover?
It's here. I mean, it's definitely here. I know of 2 cases that have been fully adjudicated and then 4 active cases that we're working on right now. That doesn't mean we are a hot spot for this type of activity. It just means we're not free of that type of activity.
Now, the officials we spoke with also say parents can take simple steps to educate their kids on safety and prevent those troubling situations from developing online, such as knowing when your kids are online. Don't assume all the content they're seeing or people they're communicating with are all positive. Have an open dialogue about online safety and set time limits.
So it really comes down to being involved with what your kids are doing and really being focused on that. What can you give folks at home as far as resources go, where they can report something if they need to, and where they can get help? What should they do? Where can they get guidance?
Yeah, the FBI has a pretty easily accessible website to report these kinds of tips, especially related to cybercrimes. You just go to tips.fbi.gov. There's also a website run through the Oregon Department of Education and monitored by the Oregon State Police. It's called Safe Oregon, and on that website you can report tips online or call a number. And basically it's a website that was set up to help improve response to threats involving schools and students. Really, it gets the school district involved right away with local law enforcement. And we'll have all this information available along with this story on the Fox 12 app.
Incredibly disturbing. You really feel for
disturbing.
parents.
Yes.
I mean, just keeping up with all of these things as the criminals move faster than we often
It's
can.
hard enough for us as adults to keep up with what we're doing, let
these
alone
kids.
being aware of what your kids are doing online.
Right.
And the key here with this type of case and this trend is there's all these new encrypted messaging apps out there, and it's easier for these groups to get together and share this content and then prey on those vulnerable victims. And there's really just so much to be vigilant.
I'm glad you gave us those resources for parents. Once again, those are on the Fox 12 app if you want to go there and check those out.
Open dialogue with your kids, so important. Adrian, thank you.
Thank you.